Welcome back everyone to Learn2Play TV. Today we will be going over the Phoenix Force resource dial. This resource dial is obtained by participating in the month 1 event for the Avengers vs. X-Men. You will also receive the first 2 Phoenix fragments. Now there are a total of 5 fragments to collect, and you will continue to receive 1 new fragment each month by participating in the Avengers vs. X-Men events. This resource dial is a great representation of the Phoenix Force entity from the AVX comics. Now, if you're familiar with the AVX storyline, you'll remember that Tony Stark is quickly trying to build a new suit of armor and a weapon to destroy the Phoenix entity headed to Earth. Tony, with the help of Hank Pym, create the Phoenix Buster armor. Meanwhile, the Avengers are in a heated battle with the X-Men on the moon. And while this epic battle continues, Tony suits up in the new Phoenix Buster armor and heads off to confront the Phoenix Force. When Tony gets in range, he quickly sets off his disruptor from the suit, shooting off a single blast and creating a huge explosion upon impact. After the dust settles, the Phoenix Force is nowhere to be found and looks like it has been eliminated. But they quickly find out that they are wrong. It has actually split the Phoenix entity into 5 separate forces, and each Phoenix fragment has attached itself to 5 of the X-Men: Cyclops, Emma Frost, Magic, Colossus, and Namor, giving them each 1/5 of the power of the Phoenix Force, and thus becoming the Phoenix 5. Now that we've gone over a little bit of the backstory, I hope that this will help you understand how this resource works in conjunction with the AVX storyline. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this resource and go over the point cost. The Phoenix Force dial itself costs 12 points, and you must have at least 1 Phoenix fragment attached to the resource to use it. Each fragment costs a total of 3 points each. Once fragments are attached to the resource, you may then distribute the fragments to a character on your force for an additional 3 points. At its lowest point cost, the Phoenix Force would cost a total of 18 points. That is 12 points for the resource, 3 points for 1 fragment, and an additional 3 points for the character assigned with that fragment. And the maximum point cost to fully utilize this resource dial is 42 points. That is with all 5 fragments assigned to the dial and 5 characters that are getting assigned with each fragment. Now each fragment offers special powers for your assigned characters, giving them either additional powers or team abilities. But that's not all. Every character assigned to the Phoenix Force benefits from the modifiers and powers that are shown on the resource dial, making them even more powerful. Now you don't necessarily need to assign every fragment. You have to have at least 1 character assigned a fragment. If you have any unassigned fragments attached to the resource at the beginning of your turn, you may choose one of those fragments. Characters that are assigned to the resource can then use that fragment's power, giving you even more option to stick it to your opponent. Now the wording may be a little confusing, but don't worry, we will go over a quick review later in this video, making it that much easier to understand. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at this resource dial. The dial is separated into 5 sections. Each section is marked by a blue number, and under that blue number you will see a red number. Now, you're probably asking me, what's the deal with these sections and why do we have these numbers? But don't worry, because we're going to go over that right now. First, the blue number we have here represents how many Phoenix fragments are left attached to the resource, ranging from 0 to 4. Now, why 4 if we're going to have 5 fragments total? Well, because you need at least one of the fragments to be assigned to one of the characters on your force. So only 4 remaining fragments can be attached to the resource. The Phoenix Force dial starts on the first click, which is the red number, of the group, the blue number, equal to the number of fragments left attached to your resource. For example, We already have 2 Phoenix fragments attached to this resource, but we can't keep both of them attached. One of the fragments must be attached to a character on our force. So I do have Cyclops here, and we will assign him the Cyclops Phoenix fragment. So we will take that off of the resource dial and assign that by placing it on his character card. Now, if we decide to leave the resource as it is with 1 fragment still attached, we would make sure that we take our resource dial and we turn it to the blue section 1 for 1 fragment, right there, you can see that blue number, onto the first click, which is the red number. And we would start the game there. Now, if we had 2 characters to assign, and look at that, we also have Namor. So let's go ahead and assign him the Namor fragment. So if we decided to assign both fragments out, we would take both fragments off and assign them to the characters by placing them on their character cards. Now the resource has no fragments assigned to it. So I'm pretty confident you all know what that means, because you guys are really smart. We would go ahead and take our resource dial and make sure that we turn our starting click to the 0 section, because there's no fragments on the dial, which is the blue number, and then we'll leave it on the red click 1. That's where we will start. So now that we have a decent understanding on how to assign fragments and how the fragments affect our starting clicks for the game, let's go over how to read the dial and how we turn it. Luckily for us, this resource dial is pretty easy to read. Now, I know it's a little hard to see on the camera on the actual dial, but for your viewing pleasure, I have an extra dial here that's going to make it easier for us to understand. The first thing that we see are all these colored boxes around the dial. These boxes represent powers and abilities. Now on your Phoenix Force resource card, there is a list that tells you what each colored box means. So on our first click, we see that we have a light green box where our attack would be, and an orange box where our defense power would be. Now I do want to point out that these colors are the same as in the 2013 Powers and Ability card. But if you haven't quite memorized those yet, go ahead and take your Phoenix Force ability card. And you can see by looking this up, under our light green attack, we have the Quake ability. And on our orange defense, we have toughness. Now, the abilities aren't all you get. You also see on this first click that there is a +1 number on our movement ability. This is what's called a modifier. This particular one means that we would then modify our movement by +1. But that's not all. As we go further down the dial, you will see that there is another kind of modifier. Except this modifier has a box around it. Now the modifier will work just like the last, except for one crucial thing. This box means that you modify all of your stats by that number. So that would mean that you have +1 to your movement, +1 to your attack, +1 to your defense, and +1 to your damage. Oh, and I want to make sure that you know that every character that is assigned to your Phoenix Force resource dial will be able to utilize those powers and modifiers that are showing on your dial. So now let's go over how we turn this dial. And there are 3 ways to do this. The first way is to KO an opposing character. When any character that is assigned a Phoenix fragment and assigned to the resource KOs an opposing character, after the action resolve, you turn the dial 1 click. Okay, that's simple enough. The second way is to roll doubles on a successful attack. When one of your assigned characters hits with a doubles roll, after action resolve, you turn the dial 1 click. So let's hope your dice are hot this game. And the third way happens when one of your assigned characters becomes KO'd. When this happens, you immediately turn your dial 5 clicks. Now this will push you over the current section you're in, but because your character that was assigned a fragment has become KO'd, that fragment automatically returns itself to the dial, thus allowing you to push yourself into the next section. Now, it is important to remember that this is the only way you can jump to additional sections. Without the KO of one of your assigned characters, you cannot go past the 5th click in the current section you are in. Right now, we have no fragments on our resource. They have all been assigned out to our characters. So that means that we have started on the click section 0 with the red section click 1. Now let's use our imaginations real quick. And let's say Namor here makes a successful attack and hits with a doubles roll. After the action resolve, you would take your resource dial and click it once. Now your characters can use those new abilities and modifiers right away. So now let's say Cyclops is going to use the +1 attack modifier that you just picked up, and he's going to attack the same opposing character. With that attack, Cyclops KOs that opposing character. After that action resolve, we take our resource dial again and we move it 1 click, picking up new abilities and modifiers. But now it's your opponent's turn, and he wants to get back at you, and he's going to try and finish Namor off. So he attacks him, and he KOs Namor, and he's done. When that happens, you take the Phoenix Force fragment that was assigned to Namor, and it gets attached back to your resource dial. Then immediately, we move the dial 5 clicks. 1, 2, 3, crossing over into the next section, 4 and 5, where we will end up on the new section, the blue section 1, because we have 1 fragment, onto the same click we were previously in the last section. So we are on 1, 3. As we continue to go farther into this AVX event and obtain the remaining fragments, you will quickly see just how well this resource represents the Phoenix Force in the AVX comics. While in the comics, the Avengers learn how to start picking off each member of the Phoenix Five. When they do, they realize that the power leaves that fallen member and gets distributed back to the remaining members on the Force, thus making them that much stronger. Because remember, they each only have 1/5 the power of the Phoenix. So as your force dwindles down to the last character assigned to your resource, that character then absorbs the other powers of your fallen members, making him stronger and moving the resource dial to its highest section, which you will quickly realize it reveals +2 and +3 modifiers, representing the full power of the Phoenix Force. Now let's go ahead and take this time to see what these fragments actually do to our characters once assigned. Here we have our first fragment, and this fragment is the Cyclops fragment. Now, these fragments have 2 uses. The first use is when you assign this fragment to your character. When you do, you are able to use the powers that are on the white side of this card. And these powers are the ability to use Poison, Range Combat Expert, and the Flight ability. Now the second option that these fragments offer is when the fragment is attached to the resource dial itself. If you remember, when we were talking about the individual fragments a little while back, I stated that any fragment that is still attached to your resource may be chosen at the beginning of your turn, so that the assigned characters can all use that Phoenix's power. And as you can see, that power is located on the back side of the cards, on the yellow side. And this Phoenix power allows all the characters assigned to that force, once chosen, to use Range Combat Expert. Now, depending on how you decide to use this fragment for your force, having these 2 options really gives you a lot of flexibility on how you want to strengthen your force. Our second fragment is the Namor fragment. And its first ability, when you assign it to your character, allows you to use poison, the flight ability, and the Avengers, Defenders, and X-Men team abilities. Now personally, I feel that this fragment, aside from getting the poison and the flight ability, is really going to be best used when attached to the resource. When attached to the resource, you can then take the advantage of giving all of your force the ability to use the Avengers, Defenders, and X-Men team abilities, thus giving you more options for your whole force. It is important to note, as we continue to gain more of the Phoenix fragments, all the other fragments will be used the same way as these two, giving you two options to use their power. Alright guys, now I know that we just went over a lot of information, so let's go ahead and take this moment and go over our quick review with these 9 easy steps. Step 1 is point cost. The Phoenix Force costs 12 points. Each fragment assigned to the Phoenix Force is 3 points, and you can have up to 5 distinct characters assigned to the Force for an additional 3 points. Now, you must have at least 1 fragment for each character assigned to this resource. Step 2 is the setup. Assign your fragments to your characters once characters are set up in your starting area. Step 3. Remember that assigned characters can use their fragment's powers printed on the white side of its card. Step 4. Characters assigned to the resource can also use the powers and modifiers shown on the resource dial. Step 5. Remember that fragments attached to the resource can be chosen at the beginning of your turn. The assigned characters to the resource can then use that chosen fragment's Phoenix power, which is printed on the orange side of the fragment cards. That power lasts until your next turn. Step 6 is turning the dial. There are 3 ways to turn the dial, both hitting successfully with a doubles roll or KOing an opposing character. You turn the dial 1 click. When a friendly character assigned to your resource is KO'd, you then turn your dial immediately 5 clicks, moving you to the next fragment section. Step 7 is more of a reminder. The only way to move to your next fragment section on the resource dial is when one of your assigned friendly characters gets KO'd. When this happens, the assigned fragment is then immediately returned to your resource and you turn the dial 5 clicks. Again, this is the only way that you can move into the next section. Without the KO of one of your friendly characters, you cannot go past the 5th click in your section. Step 8. The starting click on your resource dial depends on how many fragments remain on your resource. Remember, that is the blue number representing how many fragments are attached to the resource. And step 9 is always my favorite. Have fun. There is a lot to learn about this resource, and it's going to take a lot of practice to master the Phoenix Force. Mistakes will be made, but that's okay. Stay positive and keep on practicing. Allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from them. This will ultimately make you a better player. Alright guys, that does it for us. I hope you enjoyed this video and really learned a lot on how to use this Phoenix Force. It is a great resource and I can't wait to fully utilize this in month 4 when we get the rest of our fragments. I want to thank you for watching and invite you to become a subscriber today. We will be doing giveaways very soon, and we have a current giveaway right now for our subscribers. When we reach 500 subscribers, I will be giving away a giant man figure, and the only way to have a chance at that is to be one of my subscribers. So remember to join today. Also leave us a comment down below. I love talking to you guys and hearing what you have to say about Heroclix. And don't forget, if you did like our video, please give us a thumbs up. It really helps us a lot. Well, I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you all soon.